Hi there, my name is Rissa, and this is the first video in a series that I am starting on my channel. I want these videos to be a blend of a book analysis and a day in the life vlog. I want it to feel like we are hanging out together and chatting about books as we go through our day. It'll be like our very own book club. I can't wait to scream over books in the comments with everybody. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm setting up my craft table that I got off of Amazon. I bought a craft table just so that I don't ruin any table in the house with all the crafts. Also, I can move it wherever I want. So the first book I will be chatting about is Hooked by Emily Mcintire. It came highly recommended by some book YouTubers that I watch. Before we get into anything, I do want to say that this video will not be spoiler-free. As I said earlier, this is essentially a book analysis. It will be filled with spoilers. So, if you haven't read the book, click off this video and come back once you've read it. Then let me know your thoughts in the comments because I'd love to chat about the book with you. Alrighty, let's get started. So the first thing I want to discuss is my overall thoughts on the book and what rating I give it. So I give this book a 3.5 out of 5. This is obviously a dark romance book, and I knew that going in, but this is why the rating isn't higher for me. After reading this book, I've decided that I might prefer my books to be dark romance adjacent rather than a full-blown dark romance. And the dang nail polish is acting up and my nails look clumpy and gross. I'm sure it's user error somehow, but this has gotta go. Don't get me wrong, I do not mind darker themes and problematic content. I devour a Mafia AU like a double with cheese from In-N-Out Burger. It's messy and delicious. What I can't get behind is a MMC treating his love interest with anything less than absolute love and adoration. If he falters at all from this, straight to jail. Immediate full life sentence with no chance of parole. Bye-bye. So when James kidnapped and shackled Wendy to the wall of the basement of his bar, I kind of lost interest. My kind of villain is the kind that will burn the entire world down to save his girl. You know, the kind of villain who would take anybody out without a second thought, but the idea of harming even one hair on his girl's head causes him real physical pain. This is not that kind of story. Sure, he didn't physically torture her, but drugging her and shackling her to the wall over a assumption is wild. And that is literally why he does it. James assumes that Wendy was in on Rue's death because it happened while James was away taking Wendy's brother John to boarding school with her. Like, come on, dude. You offered to do all of that on your own. Thinking Wendy somehow manipulated him into offering to go with her to get him away from Rue is giving her way too much credit. Then, because James is clearly in an emotionally unstable state, he starts making connections that simply just are not there. He decides that Wendy must be the woman that the baker from earlier in the story was talking about. This baker is a man that Hook and his lost boys bully into giving them protection money because they are essentially the mafia. But the baker didn't have the protection money because he already gave it to some woman who told him that there is a new boss in town. I'm sorry, but if Hook is supposedly the best at torturing answers out of people, he would have asked follow-up questions. He wouldn't just accept that some unknown woman would be coming around stealing their protection money. He would have demanded that the baker at least tell him what the woman looked like, you know, hair, height, age, eye color. Did she happen to look like a certain sassy fairy from Peter Pan? But no. He asked no questions and then sulked about it, thinking how the woman must be Tina Bell, Peter Michael's assistant. And all right, sure. I guess because Wendy was there at the bakery just as James was there bullying the poor baker, that supported the idea for him that Wendy must be the mystery money woman. But I really do not feel like this should have been strong evidence for James, because there is no way the baker would have been able to keep his cool around Wendy if James was just shaking the man down for answers and the woman in question was in the same vicinity. I would think that the baker might have at least acted strangely around Wendy with concern or fear or something, or maybe even over exaggerated nonchalance, just something. I really do feel like he would have reacted to Wendy. So I feel that the reason for James to drug, kidnap, and shackle Wendy to a wall was not a good enough reason. And this is why I give this book a 3.5 out of 5. Well, that, and I don't love the secret family trope as a twist, and the story had a ton of it at the end. And the way that Wendy unalived her dad and his assistant felt very rushed too. You know, one chapter she was agonizing over the idea of Hook killing Peter, and literally within the next few chapters, she just does it herself. Yes, she found out that he killed her mother, and also it was to save James, but the whole thing lacked a little substance for me. Let's move on to what I liked about the book, because there really was a lot. I actually enjoyed the book quite a bit. I went back and forth between rating the book 3 out of 5 or a 3.5 out of 5. But I rated it higher because I really enjoyed the way the author brought aspects of the Peter Pan movie into the book. And they made it so seamless. I didn't feel like it was ever forced. You know, having Hook's rotten uncle essentially be the crocodile from the movie was genius. In the first chapter, where the uncle is introduced wearing crocodile boots, I hollered because it was such a good way to incorporate Hook's fear from the movie. I loved it. And it doesn't end there. The fact that the drug they sell is called pixie dust, his men are called the Lost Boys, and Hook calls Wendy Darling because her character's last name isn't Darling in the book, but her name from the movie is so iconic, it would be such a shame to not include it. I think it took some real skill to incorporate these things so seamlessly into a brand new story and have it make sense. Something else that I really appreciated in this book was the author's ability to capture Hook's emotions. It really made him come to life as I was reading. I mean, James clearly has some trauma, and the author wrote his spirals of a trauma-induced flashback so well that I could feel myself getting panicky while reading. And to be able to invoke the emotion from the book in the reader is impressive. Lastly, for this section, let's talk about the spice. The spice was fine. I didn't think it was bad by any means, but after reading enough spicy books, the spice loses a bit of its kick. However, a scene that I want to point out that probably wasn't something that was intended to be spicy, but it was hot, hot, hot to me. It was the scene where James comes up to Wendy and her two friends at the Jolly Roger bar in chapter 9. He walked up to them. They're clearly together at the bar as a group, but his eyes were all for Wendy. When he would speak to her friends, his eyes would remain on Wendy the whole time, even though the one friend who was obsessed with him tried way too hard to get his attention. But his attention was for Wendy and Wendy alone. And by not removing his eyes from her as he spoke to the others felt very sensual. And honestly, it's probably my favorite scene of the whole book. I'll wrap this up with my thoughts on the two main characters. James, also known as Hook, is definitely my favorite character in this book. He's a morally black character who is not too dark, but obviously still pretty unhinged, and that's the sweet spot for me. I like my fictional men a little crazy, a little overbearing, and a whole lot of hot. In the beginning, he was just the right amount of a jerk, but still a smooth talker. In the first half of the book, that I was really into him. I was rooting for the villain. Things definitely changed for me when he flipped on Wendy. Like I mentioned before, the MMC he just needs to be so obsessed with his girl that it is annoying. So I was just super disappointed when James turned on her because I loved him in the first half of the book. He even became extra fluffy at the end, which is something I always love, but I could not get back into his character after he hurt Wendy. I just couldn't do it. In the end, though, Hook was still my favorite character because I do not vibe with Wendy's character at all. And this is by no fault of poor writing, because I enjoyed the author's writing style, but Wendy in this book is why I do not like reading young adult books. And I know this is not a young adult book, but this type of character is often found in young adult books. Even as a teen, I never resonated with young adult books because the characters and the character development just was not for me. Wendy is whiny and self-conscious, and yes, she had some character development by the end, but not enough to redeem her character for me. I liked Wendy so much better when she was interacting with Hook. It felt like the only time she ever relaxed. The two of them have really good chemistry, even in the second half of the book after the incident. I will give her credit that at least she admits it's crazy that she is still interested in James even after what he did to her, which I agree. It is crazy. I will acknowledge that there was some character development for Wendy, but I didn't love that she used James to get there. She attributes her confidence to him, like he gives it to her or allows that side of her to come out. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And throughout the whole story, she whined about wanting people to see her as more than just a girl, which is actually very in character for Wendy from the movie, but it drove me nuts. At one point in the book, she tells James, and I quote, "I am not a girl." I rolled my eyes so hard, I still have a headache. She is just very immature. Okie pokey. Well, that wraps up my thoughts on the book Hooked by Emily Mcintire. This was so much freaking fun. I am going to love doing this series. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I can't wait to chat about the book with you. My next book club video will be Sin and Chocolate by K.F. Bryn, so grab a copy and let's get reading together. See you in the next video.